What is the scariest fact you know? Story 1. Sometimes the first symptom of an aneurysm is passing away from it. Saw recently that as many as 1 in 30 people experience a level of brain aneurysm in their life. Most of them never get a symptom, and it heals. But when it doesn't, you can see no signs until sudden death. Brother had a one, and by luck, got a strange headache that made him, a builder, demand a scan at his local A plus E or emergency room, which found a large aneurysm on the verge of bursting. He got immediate emergency surgery. He's the type of person who has to leave the hospital the same day as getting surgery to use paracetamol rather than lie in bed for a week and recover with help. Story 2. Alzheimer's symptoms manifest. Only a decade after the disease started to deteriorating brain matter, I read that people with ADHD are at higher risk of developing Alzheimer's, which terrifies the crap out of me as someone with ADHD. That means there will come a point where it's dementia causing my forgetfulness, and my family is likely to attribute it to my ADHD and won't even consider brain deterioration as the cause. Story 3. As of right now, there are an estimated 6 nuclear bombs from the US that are missing and unaccounted for. Our bodies have no tangible way of knowing that we're breathing oxygen. As long as you're not choking and the gas you're breathing isn't irritating, you would just quickly fall asleep and pass away. Technicians who work with nitrogen tanks have died simply by walking into an area that hasn't been completely flushed of the gas. I worked around nitrogen tanks. Nitrogen or helium asphyxiation has got to be one of the best ways to go. No discomfort. You just lose consciousness. There's no good reason that the method isn't used for executing death sentences except that it is too easy a death. Story 4. If our immune system detects our eyes, it will start destroying them. This is absolutely true, and not just for humans. My dog got SARS, sudden acquired retinal degeneration syndrome, which is the immune system attacking her eyes and her digestive system. She doubled her weight on the same food she always ate, started heavily drooling, and went totally blind in about 2 weeks. Her vet had never seen it before. We are 1.5 years in, and she has had diarrhea the entire time, which is another symptom. It apparently doesn't affect their lifespan, it just makes you and your dog miserable. There's no treatment or cure, but it happens primarily to middle-aged female dogs who have been spayed, with beagles and cockers most susceptible. She is both of those plus Chihuahua. I was horrified to find out that the same thing happens to people. Story 5. If you start showing symptoms of rabies, you will most likely pass away from it. It's one of very few conditions that have a near 100% fatality rate once you are symptomatic, even in the face of modern medicine. Take a moment and imagine. You've always had a soft spot for animals. You fetched a towel, murmured gentle words as you reached for it. That's when it bit you. Sharp, fast, you hissed through your teeth but waved it off. Just a scratch. You cleaned it, forgot it, but that little scrape had just signed your death certificate. Weeks pass. Then comes the headache. Nagging, but manageable. You take some ibuprofen, go about your day. Next, a fever and an aching tightness in your neck begin. Probably a cold, you won't shrug as you try to power through it. Then come the dreams. Haunting, vivid, real. The shadows in the corner are watching you, whispering. You lash out at the barest inconveniences, snap at your loved ones. Existing becomes confusing, irritating, overwhelming. You hardly recognize yourself in the mirror anymore, a pale, shaken shell of yourself. Then suddenly, water's utterly terrifying. Your throat clenches at the sight of what was once a refreshing glass. The sound of the faucet makes your skin crawl. You try to drink, baffled as your muscles seize, your body fighting you yet simultaneously crying out in thirst. It is then that you realize, all too late, the rabies virus continues its unrelenting rampage within you. Your next fear is the light, and new fears continue to stack up at every turn. You are hiding, prisoner in your own mind, as everything you once knew becomes unfamiliar. Nowhere is safe, everything is hunting you. You are no longer yourself, but a cornered beast, desperately clawing at anything that comes near. Agony descends, your muscles spasm, and your final flicker of life is spent, lost to madness. Story 6. Not every person breaks down food the same way. In some cases that have resulted in death from pent-up gas being released while the person is sleeping can be deadly. In 2005, a case in France made headlines after a man accidentally ended his wife with a deadly musky brown shardling. The man had been celebrating the local football club's big win against a rival club. He had been drinking beer and a sort of homemade mead drink known locally as a hydromel bière bon marché for 24 to 32 hours straight, with a break to eat cheese and bread. The bread and cheese formed a blocking agent for the liquids and gases building up in the man's body. It wasn't until that he came home and fell asleep next to his wife that the body slowly started to apply pressure to the cheese and bread. The autopsy confirmed what the police had suspected. The wife had suffocated due to the lack of oxygen in the room, along with the barf choking her. At a certain point, the smell had caused her to violently barf. The husband survived due to his slowed breathing. He had been so drunk that his oxygen levels dropped to that of a monk in a deep, meditative state. Gastroenterologists have said it's wise to have your primary doctor do a colonoscopy before and after events like the Super Bowl, the World Cup, and other alcohol-infused events. This will let you know if there is a dangerous level of gas building. Story 7. Everyone talks about fossil fuels running out. Nobody talks about phosphorus running out. Phosphorus is so essential for life, and millions of tons of it are used in artificial fertilizer. However, it only exists in an extractable form in a few places. Morocco has the most phosphate rock deposits, if I remember correctly. Some experts have estimated that we'll run out in a few hundred years. If that happens, food security is well and truly messed up. Story 8. Your body doesn't detect the need for oxygen. It detects the excess of CO2. If you're in a room full of CO2, you'll feel like you're constantly choking. If you're in a room of another gas, such as CO1 or something else, you don't detect it. You'll think you're breathing just fine. You'll feel fine. No shortness of breath. But with each breath, the oxygen in your lungs gets replaced with another gas, and you start getting a bit sleepy, and you close your eyes for a bit, and you fall asleep, and you never wake up. Without even realizing, you'll soon die. Story 9. The mission is to hit net zero emissions by a certain point this century. But first, we ain't even hit the peak of emission rates yet. They'll rise and accelerate. And it's an optimistic outlook to hit net zero. No one kids themselves into thinking we can reverse this situation. Carbon capturing and trees and cyanobacteria ain't fixing this. The global temperature rise is inevitable. We can only reduce the rate of acceleration. Imagine being told, we can't stop the tsunami, and instead, the best we can do is just make it rise a little less high. I typed this on a train in May in the north of the UK, and let me tell you, I don't even remember feeling this hot last July at summer's peak. And it's going to get worse. Not just the heat, the weather patterns, the water acidification, and more. Mad Max was optimistic. We messed up. Wally, here we come. Story 10. People get mad about the crappy things companies like Disney, Amazon, and other companies do, but nobody suspects or talks about the things Nestle does. Nestle has committed more heinous things than most political leaders has done. I'm not going to list the gigantic list of stuff Nestle has done, but here is some of the things Nestle has done. Sold baby formula to an illiterate populace that makes them only available to buy that product to feed their children. Sold horse meat. They also own entire water sources in other countries. Used extreme child labor for chocolate production. There's a lot more, probably the chat can list, but these were the ones on top of my head I can remember. And nobody bats an eye about Nestle when it comes to horrible companies, and it kind of scares me. Story 11. We're at risk of solar flares breaking every single electron that we have. And that the closest call we've had from one of these life-altering solar storms was only just a few days off being directly in its path. Beyond just the impact we'd all face without being able to use Reddit, think of the wider implications that would have in a technology-reliant world, especially in emergency services, transport, and logistics. We'd be screwed. Also, for the people mentioning false vacuum, that's not a fact, but a theory. We don't know if it's possible, and even if it is possible, we don't know that it would actually turn out the way that it's been theorized due to the expansion of the universe. The person who theorized it is a lot smarter than me, so I won't rule it out, but it's not a fact. But yes, it is a terrifying theory. Story 12. We detect asteroids when they reflect light that we can see or they cross background objects. Interstellar asteroids, comets like Muamua, can hit Earth without us seeing them come in. They also travel at very high speeds. Bonus. If the universe started with a big bang and spread evenly, it's weird that two-thirds of the galaxies we can see rotate clockwise. You'd expect this to eventually become roughly 50% at galactic scale. One of the theories is that we are inside a black hole. Black holes spin, and that could explain why there is a dominant rotation. If that's true, then every black hole could harbor a new universe, and we have a parent universe, which we, with the current laws of physics, would never be able to experience. Story 13. That there's such a thing as flesh-eating disease. It's a slow, painful, hellish way to go. It is called necrotizing fasciitis. It is caused by bacteria, usually group A strep, and any break in the skin can result in NF. It moves rapidly, not slowly. I've had patients that had soft tissue destroyed in an up to 8-inch area in less than a half hour. We mark the area and you can see the tissue dying as it spreads. It is not uncommon for patients with NF to have to go to surgery more than once a day. I had one patient that lost one arm in the morning, both legs that afternoon, and was going back into surgery to remove their other arm at the end of my 14-hour shift. They passed away of septic shock the next day. Story 14. The universe is expanding at such a fast rate that 94% of the currently observable universe is lost to us forever. Even if we could travel at the speed of light today, we could never reach them as they are traveling away from us faster than the speed of light. All those worlds, all that knowledge is already lost to us forever. At some point in the distant future, the light from these galaxies will no longer reach us at all, and there will be just the empty blackness of the void in their place. Story 15. There are many people in military organizations around the world that literally could launch nuke missiles right now. Those people also are often very religious, and because of that, believe that the afterlife would be a better place to be than here on Earth. If they somehow, accidentally or even on purpose, launched that missile and started a nuclear exchange, they might wind up in heaven way sooner. And we let those people be in charge of the missiles. Have a good night's sleep, everybody. Story 16. Carrying capacity for humans on this planet is less than, probably much less than, 2 billion. We are at 8.2 billion and rising and far into overshoot. Overshoot always, not usually, not sometimes, ends horrifically for the population in overshoot and for the environment that population relies on. Since humans consider nearly everything on the planet, living or dead, to be a resource for humans, we are taking most other living things with us. We are like the St. Matthew Island deer, but don't have the excuse of not being smart enough to know what we are doing. All other issues we think are significant, wars, politics, etc., are like people on a boat squabbling as the boat goes down a river headed for a 1,000-foot waterfall. Story 17. One symptom of PTSD is called hyperarousal. When a traumatic event happens to someone, the brain reacts accordingly to the danger. The body's stress response, including the release of adrenaline, is a natural reaction to perceived threats. However, in PTSD, the system becomes overactive and remains activated even after the threat has passed. In some cases, this can lead to the brain being in constant fight or flight mode, essentially forever unless treated. But effective therapy is hella expensive and inaccessible, so imagine suffering a trauma at, say, 14 and then living in constant danger mode until your 70s. Story 18. That we as the medical community know about CMV, cytomegalovirus, and how easily it can be passed from shedding children to pregnant mothers and thus affecting their fetus baby. But we hardly educate pregnant mothers or women who might plan to become pregnant about the fact that it exists and how to avoid catching it. I only ended up knowing about it since many of the children I work with can be affected by CMV, and thus when I became pregnant, I needed to take extra precautions while at work. My OB/GYN never even mentioned it to me, even though the effects, depending on when a woman contracts CMV, can be devastating to the baby's development. Story 19. Brain-controlling parasites. There's a fungus called Ophiocordyceps that infects ants, takes over their nervous system, and forces them to climb to the perfect height before ending them and growing out of their bodies to spread spores. Even scarier, there's Toxoplasma gondii, a parasite that can infect humans and may subtly alter behavior. It makes rodents lose their fear of cats, so they get eaten, continuing the parasite's life cycle. The idea that something microscopic could hijack your brain without you even knowing? That's nightmare fuel. Story 20. When a child experiences severe trauma, the mind shatters, almost like dropping a large stone on glass. This shatter effect results in the formation of multiple personalities and false memories. This is, however, still debated by psychologists and psychiatrists. The worst part is that you may never know. You may just feel you have lost track of time, awoken in positions or places you may not have fallen asleep in. Some people may form memories with you that you don't remember, that you swear did not happen. You likely won't remember the trauma that caused it or won't remember how awful it was, kind of like downplaying it. It is scary, but has upsides, whether you believe it to be real. There is evidence both supporting, proving, and disproving. Story 21, that you really do need 7 to 9 hours of sleep every day. Even at 6 hours, the lack of sleep decreases efficiency, productivity, and increases risk of developing dementia and Alzheimer's. Furthermore, it weakens the immune system and handicaps the body's ability to destroy cancer cells, which therefore increases risk of cancers of the breast, colon, ovaries, and prostate. The scary part of it is that you can't get back all the sleep that you lose out on because sleep efficiency decreases, so trying to catch up on the weekends isn't really making up for what you lost throughout the week. Ironically, those who say, I can sleep when I'm dead, will end up dead quicker because of lack of sleep over time. Edit, these are not claims based on my knowledge. It's based on a 2-hour podcast with Dr. Matthew Walker, a professor of neuroscience and psychology. He focuses on the subject of sleep and its impact on human health. Story 22. There's a haunted house called the McCamey Manor. People there can be subjected to hours of torture, abuse, and humiliation. You need to sign a 40-page waiver to be let in, and the only cost is a single can of dog food. In this waiver, it states that the owner will not let you out unless you are having a serious mental crisis or are suffering from near-fatal bodily harm. Panic attacks do not count, even severe ones. There is a $2,000 reward for those who finish, but nobody has ever completed it. The longest anyone has lasted was 6 hours, and it can be as long as 10 hours. If you really want to see the footage, there are plenty of videos of the torture on YouTube. Just be wary, as these videos are highly disturbing. Story 23. This may sound stupid, but I think one of the scariest facts I know is the fact that you can find so much sick and depraved crap on the internet with just a few clicks of a button. If I or hell, anyone wanted to find some cartel beheadings or some crap, bam, easy. The internet is messed up, man. When I was young and dumb, I basically had an ongoing contest with my friends to find the most disturbing crap we could on the internet. I started this at about 12. This went on for years, and I was on B daily, along with much more underground sites. I am positively this severely damaged me mentally, and I have some PTSD symptoms from some of the things I found. At the time, I felt unaffected, but the more time that passes, the more horrific imagery pops back into my head. Having it between the screen and me provided some sort of mental barrier, but in time that has faded, and I'm left with all these broken thoughts and images of the deepest, darkest depravity you could imagine. It hurts me deeply, and I wish I hadn't inflicted it onto myself. Story 24. Geologists here. The Earth's magnetic poles, places your compass point to, are moving at an alarming rate. While they switch, think north compass arrow will point south, every 10,000 years or so, we are overdue for a switch. So happy 2021, y'all. Also, the supervolcano under Yellowstone does technically have the firepower to wipe out much of life on planet Earth, but it's not overdue like many people try to claim it is. That's just fear-mongering. Also, there was a point in the past during the Ice Age, I think, where less than 2,000 humans were alive. If it would have been modern humans, we would have to put ourselves on the endangered species list, story 25. If you really were granted immortality, I don't mean like a vampire that can be killed in a certain way. I mean true immortality, like you will never cease to exist. Even after all the stars have burned out and the universe contracts and there is another Big Bang, you will still be conscious and aware, and as many times as this cycle repeats itself, this will never change. Your existence will never end, ever, for any reason. That thought is truly horrifying. That really depends on how you view consciousness, though. There are plenty of ways to get vaporized down to atoms, so unless there's some hitherto undiscovered route that all consciousness is tied to atomic structure, you'd have a way out eventually. Just wait for the sun to go supernova, and it's good night. On topic, I think immortality with an off switch would be good. Take as much time as you want to live, and when you're done, just find somewhere to switch off comfortably. Story 26. You could have experienced incredible and unimaginable pain and anguish, or similar horrible things at any time and for any period of time, but you've forgotten. Because you've forgotten, it's as if it never happened. But at a point in time, a version of you was experiencing unbelievable pain. It's scary to think you could have forgotten many things that nobody knows happened. But when they did, you yourself did experience them. The worst part of that is that even if you don't remember it mentally, your body does physically. So you have reactions and responses that make no sense to you because you don't remember the thing you forgot. The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk explains more about PTSD and how the body holds on to those traumas. Story 27. A thing called estate recovery exists. Say you've worked your whole life. You have a solid 401k, nice house, etc. Then you get sick, like we all will. You lose your job and the insurance that comes with it. So the medical debt collectors take your life savings until you're below the $2,000 threshold needed to qualify for Medicaid, which happens insanely fast because every tiny thing seems to cost at least $1,000. Once you die, everything left that you had spent your life working towards goes to the state, not your kids. You lost most of it to debt collectors, but now your children pay the ultimate price. They lose the home they grew up in and everything else that you owned. It wasn't enough for them to deal with the loss of a parent. The system is rigged to keep poor people poor. If you want your kids to have a good chance at life, you better start giving to them now. And just hope that you don't get sick within 4 years because that'll count as a transfer of assets and they'll take it back.